Hey everyone, welcome to this week's video. Today I'll be showing you how to go from one dart to two darts using the pivot method. Before getting started, you'll need to have a bodice pattern that mimics the same shape that I'm showing here, but you can also apply this to basically anything that has a singular dart and pivot it in the direction that you need it to go. So let's get started, and I hope you enjoy this video. Alright, the first thing I'm doing here is just tracing off my block. After cutting it out, I tear off a new piece of paper. I'll mark my vertical and horizontal lines, squaring them off together. Once I have these two lines, I will then take the block piece that I cut out and tape it to the vertical line, and making sure that my center front piece at the bottom hits right at the horizontal line. Alright, once I have the shoulder seam and the center front seam taped down, I will then let everything else stay freestanding because that's where the manipulation will take place. What I'm doing next is labeling the dart legs A and B, and then my side seam will get the letter X. Once I have those, I will then square off a line from the center front, and I'm going to draw it all the way to the side seam, but I need it to go straight through my apex. Next, I'm going to cut that line that I just made, and I'm going to end right above the dart that's already there. Once I have this, I will then tape down my side seam and my armhole, or just tape any part down that's going to be flying around. My paper really loves to roll up on me, so I have to be very generous with how much tape I use or where I put my weights so nothing slides around on me. So once I've cut into my pattern, I'm then going to pivot down this piece, making sure that I touch the letter X down to the horizontal line. Once the X is touching the horizontal line, you're going to tape that in place or pin it in place depending on what kind of table you have. Then you're going to trace off everything. Whenever I trace things, I only trace the right angles and where my darts end, and always the curved lines. This is so every time I trace off, I'll take that paper off and then I'll connect all of the lines right where they need to be, drawing all the way through the point and intersections, so then I know that my right angles are right angles and my curved lines are as curved as they are supposed to be, nice and smooth. So make sure when you are tracing that you are extending the line through where your potential seam allowance will go through. This will help with blocking and making sure that your pattern is accurate. Also, make sure that you transfer any of your notches. Don't forget your notches because it's really hard to find where they're supposed to be later in the project when you've already cut something out and now you're trying to guess. So don't forget them. One important thing to call out right now is to notice that my original dart is pretty far extended towards the bust, and the new dart vantage point is a little bit further away. So you don't want a dart to land right on your apex unless you would really like to look like Madonna in the, what was it, 80s in the bullet bra. So you want to back away the dart about a 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch. It really depends on how big your bust is, but for this example, I believe I'm using just a 1/2 inch. So this will give a very nice smooth bust and not have any pointed aspects to it. I also want to point out that I use hash lines, like little slash marks, on my pattern drafts to indicate that I don't need to pay attention to this line, or to tell myself don't cut on this line. So definitely, if it's a rough draft or if it is something that you know will be tossed away, it's not your final draft, use hash lines, X's, or however you feel like you need to make sure you don't cut along the wrong line or whatever the case may be. Don't forget to true your darts. It's very easy to think you are done, you can just cut everything out, but there's one more step before you really get to add in your seam allowances, and that is truing up your darts. To true up the dart, it means to fold the dart in the direction that it's supposed to go and then cut it out. But you have to true the darts, because if you don't, your seam allowances won't lay straight and all of the bulk of the fabric will be going in the wrong direction. The bulk of your fabric from a dart, you're gonna have everything pressed to the center of the body. If it's a bust dart, you want it to be pressed towards your waistline. And the same thing applies whenever you are truing your dart on your pattern. You're going to fold your dart, kind of like origami style. You kind of have to manipulate the paper to get it to lay just right. So if you're lifting your paper up off the table, that's totally fine. It's however you need to do it in order to get a nice clean fold, to get it to be folded, the bulk of your dart to be folded. Say it's on the bust, it needs to be facing down, and if it is on your waist, it needs to be facing towards the center of the body. Now that I have my bust dart and a waist dart, and I've trued up the ends of the darts into the side seam and waist seam, I'm going to trace it off yet again, making sure that all of my lines are nice and smooth. Again, I'm only doing the right angles and areas that are very important And then I connect the dots once I have indicated all of these little intersections. Once I have this fully traced off, I will then go in and add my seam allowance. So typically, industry standard would be a 1/2 inch at the shoulder seam, a 1/4 inch at the underarm and armhole seams, and then a 1/2 inch again at the waistline. Center front should always be on the fold unless otherwise indicated, but for this case, I'm just doing a cut on the fold. Whenever you're trying to make curved lines, try to do it in one fell swoop or 2. Don't try 6 because you'll be able to tell where you've started and stopped those lines. And same thing with a hem. If you have a perfectly straight hem, say it's like a pencil skirt or something, make sure you use the long ruler. Don't try to measure up or however and have pieced lines. One solid line, and then when you do your seam allowances or your hems, same thing, mark in a few places what a 1 inch hem is maybe, and then connect all of those dots with one side of your ruler and just make one long line. This is the best way, best practice to have smooth lines, consistency, and just making sure that everything is accurate. So one last thing you'll do is label your pattern piece. So I typically label with whether it's a front or back piece, bodice piece, or a skirt piece. So for this instance, it's going to be my front bodice, 2-dart manipulation exercise. Then I would add my name and the date, or whatever is best information for you to have. If this was being turned into something more advanced, then I may give it a style number or a style name, and then write out the fabric, if it's going to be a cut 1 or a cut 2, and also is there a lining. So I can go further into linings and those pattern pieces in a different video, so stay tuned. Maybe that'll come in the future. Alright, so you have all of your seam allowances, you've cut it out. You still have one more step though. You have to make your notches. So we have this tool that's called a notcher. It's really small and it makes about 1/8 of an inch notch right where the dart legs are. And depending on how long a side seam is, or an inseam, or your rises in pants for instance, you'll have some indications with notches on how to make sure everything is aligned. Another thing that you'll use notches for is for your zipper placements or placket placements, to make sure those are aligned and they're starting and stopping right where they need to, and not off-centered or whatever the situation is. I hope you enjoyed this demonstration on how to manipulate darts going from 1 to 2 darts. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below. And if you have not subscribed to this channel yet, make sure you hit the subscribe button and notification button, and stay tuned for what comes next.